Welcome to the Strategic Project Leader, where we help you leverage strategic project management so you can achieve your goals. Now, here's your host, Alabi.
Good morning and welcome to another fantastic episode on the Strategic Project Leader. Yes, on the Strategic Project Leader, we're all about helping professionals, entrepreneurs, and executive leaders elevate leveraging strategic project management skills, as well as leveraging the skills that they have already had in the past to create something greater and better. Today is a fantastic episode because we're going to be diving deep into a subject that a lot of people are actually talking about. And you wonder, as a professional, how exactly can I embrace sustainability? I'm your host, Alabi, called the Strategic Project Leader. I'm a consultant. I am a trainer. I am one who has the superpowers in project management. I have been able to transform my career, my business, and my life with this actual skill set. So I'm always happy to come in and share these tools and resources with other great thought leaders to help you become the better version of yourself. Today I have a leader. Last week we had someone from the Netherlands. Today we're going all the way to someone really special. It's actually a secret. I'm going to unleash that very, very soon. But we're going all the way to talk about how we can actually mainstream sustainability in project management. But before we go any further, I want to know in the comments, where exactly are you joining me from? I can see a lot of people already on there. Let us know where you're joining us from and just get your questions ready because we're going to be diving deep into this topic. I want to talk about this leader I have in the studio today. When we think about sustainability, here's one that he's actually passionate about this. He has put in a lot of work and research when it comes to policies, when it comes to how we can actually become better and create a better world for ourselves as well. He's an enabler, he's a trainer, he's a consultant, an academic as well. He's worked with the private and the public sector around enterprise development, project management, energy as well. He's actually an engineer by trade, and he brings over 13 years experience within policy and advocacy when it comes to sustainability as well. He's worked across, planned curriculum development, as well as product development initiatives. He's got a master's in project management and so many skills that we're going to be talking about today. Can you please join me as I bring all the way from Pakistan, engineer Hamid Hassi. Mr. Hamid, how are you doing this evening for you? It's morning for me. How are you?
Thank you very much, Fola, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm well, and I look forward to having a very good and participative discussion with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's already late over there in Pakistan, so we want to get right into it and understand all things sustainability. Before we kind of get in, I want to ask a question. What pulled you into the world of research around sustainability?
So I'm basically a program manager at the top think tank in Pakistan, which is the Sustainable Development Policy Institute. And based on research that we conducted, I think we lost our way by defining the Sustainable Development Goals in a very good way. Very holistic definitions came out. But somewhere in the middle, the prioritization, especially from the government side, was not proper. And we eventually went into a more detailed focus on one aspect of sustainability rather than all. So sustainability stems from a triple bottom line theory, and that entails not only the environmental aspects of sustainability, but also the social and economic aspects. Of course, the realization in the developed countries is better in this regard, but the developing countries, due to their economic and social challenges, face a lot of issues here. Just to give you an example, although I do believe that the economic aspect probably are the most important aspect for any sustainability initiative to fly in. For example, if we are talking about the solar energy uptake in any developing or developed country, the environmental aspect did not get the message to shift to, for example, the solar PV systems that are now installed on most rooftops. But when the economic case was developed through the reversible metering systems and others, then of course we went into the solar. So still, the solar technology, if you use it with the batteries, might not be economically sustainable. But when we talk about solar from the aspect of savings, economic savings, then it automatically becomes sustainable. So that economic sustainability is eventually driving the environmental sustainability as well. And
That's right. Yeah, I love that. I want us, before we dive in even deeper, it's very important for those who are actually listening to understand the background around this. When we think about sustainability, engineer it's always a case of we think about just the environmental impact of how exactly are we, leveraging or the tools that we have to create a better environment for our current and future generations. However, when we think about the triple bottom line, it's an approach that looks at not just the environmental impact, but we need to think about how does it affect us economically and socially as well. And that's an aspect that we need to understand to say, in your day-to-day activities as project managers, as business executives, what are the components are we putting in place to ensure that we are being sustainable as leaders, as project managers, as coordinators to ensure that we create something even better? So let's dive into that. Engineer, when we think about sustainability, a lot of the times it's environmental. So as a project manager, where do we start? And how can we look at the other economics that could help us create even a better sustainable, world that we definitely want?
I think it's all over the project life cycle, and if you just look at the United Nations 2030 agenda and the 17 goals that they have developed, they actually are the basic proof that the thought of sustainable development included a triple bottom line. And companies like the Sustainable Development Policy Institute are here just to ensure that we keep the focus towards all three aspects that we are talking: economic, social, and the environmental. But the main issue that we are facing is that somewhere in the middle, the masses got confused, and they started confusing sustainability with only the environmental aspects.
That's right.
And although the academic fraternity has a good understanding of this, but I think throughout the project life cycle, we can help in truly attaining the sustainable development goals that are there for 2030, only if we understand that all three aspects have to go together. So for instance, if we are the first step is the project selection, or the project design. That is where we need to design projects in a way that should include economic aspects, social aspects, and environmental aspects. For example, these days in Pakistan, we have a very loud debate on the coal power plants. So Pakistan got into coal very late. We almost started our first coal power plant around 8 years back. And the debate is that coal has definitely more potential for employment than a wind power plant, for instance, of the same capacity. But which is the bigger problem? So Pakistan is not a bigger emitter. So we need to have such a balance that there is a matrix defining our project choices, that okay, this project does not qualify environmentally, but maybe it's good for the socio-economic development of that area. So in Pakistan, the biggest coal field, which is called the Thar coal field, it has totally the economic development is a case study there. So we have seen a total upright development. There used to be a malnourished area, which is now converted into a very developed area. Only the part two, which is Mithi, and that has given Pakistan a different way of economic development that was never seen before. But of course, there is no denying that coal is bad for the environment. Similarly, for the wind, but we need to be making sure that all three aspects of the triple bottom line, and I like to add governance here as well, just like someone in the comment section added. So governance is also a part of the social aspect. Like if we are developing projects and we are infringing the rights of people there, we are not fulfilling the constitutional rights that are given to the people. Maybe that is French to the developed world, but in developing countries it is very normal for us to maybe not pay the minimum wage, or even have bonded labor, child labor. Then the lack of inclusiveness, all of these need to be put into order in order for us to go forward, and that will eventually lead to that sustainable development. So recently, there are two schools of thought in project management, and I think we need to understand that mega projects will never be successful as per the iron triangle. So we need to make sure that the benefit stage, that the benefit or the value stage that we call,
Yeah.
needs to include these environment, economic, and social success going forward.
I think that's extremely important for those who are actually listening. When we think about sustainability, the concept of sustainability is actually about the ability to actually meet the present needs of this generation without actually compromising the ability of future generations. We think about that. We need to actually balance economic, social, and environmental considerations to ensure that long term well being and prosperity can actually be achieved. And so, a lot of the times we think, yes, I need to recycle because that's, when you think about the environment, but also there's a social aspect of that. Because I asked project managers, for example, where they actually always overwork. There's so many priorities. How are you thinking about your well being? How you are supporting yourself to ensure you think about your rights, social justice, education, healthcare, diversity and inclusion. There's so many aspects that you as a PM needs to think about when you're putting together your project. So, engineer, Harmon, I want us to think about this. I know we know talk about environment. I want us to really focus also about the social aspect of that. I love the example that you brought about in Pakistan, where there was a coal project that had to be put in place because of the economic benefits. So, as leaders, how can we look and balance the environmental, the social, and the economic pieces to make this decision, even and also the governance side, to be sure that we are still being sustainable?
So I think there is a realization, and I'll just like to quote the PMI's last call for research proposals, in which they specifically mentioned that how can we integrate ESG concept, the environment social governance concept, into project management. So project management again is not thought of as a strategic tool by all organizations. We have to understand that, and the role of project manager being strategic is also not a very recent. It's a very recent phenomena that people have started taking project management as a strategic decision making system. So and when you include something like the ESG into your basic framework for development of the projects, then of course the planning and execution, monitoring and evaluation, and finally when you're assessing the benefits, that is where I think we need to focus on, and that metrics that I'm talking about, that we need to put weight on all three aspects: economic, social, and environmental, and maybe we can add another one in the form of governance, which can cover the areas which are covered under the SDG 16 and 17. uh, just moving forward, and this is something that a lot of organizations have done because they had the room for the critical mass, or the ability, or the financial room for that experimentation. So a lot of multinational companies have done that. Like for example, Unilever Pakistan, I work with them, and they have come up with their own sustainability metrics for all the operations as well as the projects that they do. But let's talk about a typical small and medium enterprise working in a developing country that might be a vendor to Unilever. But how will that they be able to do this without the evidence that we can create as researchers for them that this is economically beneficial? So for example, again, I'll go back to the solar energy example. A lot of industry is now shifting to solar because of the economic aspect. They are not at all acquainted with the concept of environmental sustainability through solar energy, but they have tried to shift to solar because of the economic aspect or the financial aspect, but that has resulted in the economic uptake. The other aspect which is related to ESG is the responsible investor and customers. So customers and investors play a major role in the corporate world, and we need to, and of course, if my customer is responsible and they ensure that I follow the social, environmental, and economic aspects, then automatically I will have a more focus on these things. Similarly, the same is the case with investors. Globally, during the last year, around 40% of the investment that came into the developing world was from responsible investors. So this is something that is happening that will eventually make the difference. But of course, the customers, for example, if I'm talking about Pakistan, my customers might not be that responsible as the customers in Europe may be. So the private sector is also divided into two aspects. So the private sector that is focusing on exports to Europe might be more responsible in terms of economic, social, and environmental sustainability, but the products that they develop for the local one might not be that important to them. Another aspect that we need to make sure is that we should not only focus on the product that comes out of the project. We should also focus on the process.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
for example, if I'm developing wind power plants with the same construction method that I use for the coal power plants, which is not sustainable, then automatically that wind power plant will not be green. It might be yellow because of the output, but it will never be green. So we need to focus on sustainability of project and by project, which is, of course, an area of interest. And people like Sylvius, who are researching project management, especially sustainability in project management, they have come up with this conclusion that sustainability is not only stemmed in the product, but also in the project.
I love that. The fact that when we think about sustainability, for instance, you say, I am going to be installing a solar, panels on my house, or I'm going to be doing a project where we're going to be generating, power through solar. Automatically, you just feel that that's a sustainable project. But the question as well is, what processes are you leveraging through the life cycle of that project, from your design phase to planning, right through to when it's actually installed? How are your teams integrating? How are you doing your quality management? How are you working with your stakeholders? Because a lot of the practices even may not even be sustainable. So the process of creating and building that project has to involve a thought through process where you think every step of the way to understand, from initiating, what exactly are we going to do? How are we going to incorporate? What's the vision of that? How are we going to ensure that we have the KPIs that will actually indicate when we're going off the chat? So what practices can we also implement throughout the process to ensure that we can hit the sustainable target, engineer?
So I think we are already there. So if we talk about the PMBOK standard, I did my PMP back in 2015 with the PMBOK fifth edition, and I also had the chance of going through the fourth edition. There is a constant updation of the sustainability aspect in our standard. Similarly, I'm also a Prince 2 practitioner, so therein in their standard, which is I think called the Managing Successful Projects through Prince 2, their methodology also indicates that there is a constant need for a more strategic role of the project management, which entails, of course, the sustainability aspect. So if we talk about the stakeholder engagement, that was included in the PMBOK fifth edition. Then if we talk about the latest PMBOK, which was, of course, a surprise to most of us, but that focuses almost 50% of it focuses only on the team and the stakeholders. So that is the social aspect. Then they have actually very definitely talked about the environmental aspects, and of course the economic aspects as well, that we need to focus on delivery. So while the economic aspect is very much covered by the adaptive approach coming from the agile project management, the other aspects need to be further I think explored with reference to these standards. while Prince 2 started focusing on the benefit level project management a bit earlier than PMBOK. Maybe that was the reason, because PMBOK already had their program management and portfolio management standards, and of course the whole organizational project management maturity model. So I think this is the right time that we have a strategic role for project management in all our standards that needs to translate into the sustainability aspect as well.
That's right.
Just to yes, and because of that lack of or more tactical focus that we initially had on project management, I think we lost ground on some of these aspects, especially the social aspects. So now, when we talk about project management, you will the maximum literature that you find on project management will be dealing with either sustainable project management or sustainable project success. So this is, I think, the move in the right direction. But there is a role after academics. So the academic output needs to be translated into the practitioner way, and that is where think tanks like Sustainable Development Policy Institute and Strategic Project Management. I think this is where we need to play our role, and that is why I actually reached out to you for this podcast, as well as the program that we think on developing towards this mainstreaming of sustainability in project management.
100%. You have highlighted a major opportunity, I call it, not even a gap. And so when we think about project management, a lot of the times we just imagine the execution. You come in to create an outcome and an output based on the need of a client. However, we need to elevate the project management profession. And that's why the strategic project leader was actually embedded. It's all about how we can be more strategic. Think about tomorrow. It actually goes beyond just delivering a project. How does it connect back to organizational goals and objectives? The strategic piece of it. How can we be more sustainable? How can we ensure that we are not just putting products out there that will be hampering the futures of our future generation? And so these are the aspects that we need to always think about. And so I think we need to change gear. People might be wondering, I am just a PM. So how can I incorporate these practices? I know even me doing a lot of research, and when I work with my clients, I talk about even from the basic things from initiating, right? When you think about the ESG goals every single time, even when you conduct your risk assessment, do you incorporate the fact that, the social impact of your project? Or what are the other economic drivers as well? Those are things you need to start thinking about. When you start planning, you need to ensure that whatever scope items you have are things that find achieve organizational goals and objectives, but think about what exactly where is the economics of that. How can you ensure that you're planning towards whatever regulations that are actually coming? But what are the ideas, engineer, have that can we actually incorporate as well, that when PMs come into a role, that they might just say, I'm just an IT guy, I don't even know how I can become more sustainable. What practices can they start putting in place in their day to day that can help them even push us towards this strategic focus for project management?
I think the basic requirement for all project managers, and I've been a project manager for the last 15 years. So I think the main thing that changed my mind on this was by attending conferences, by attending seminars. I think that the kind of awareness that we get from even the peer knowledge sharing, this is
Yeah.
something that we need to do. So there should be a lot of peer-to-peer interaction, and similarly, of course, just like PMI has their own webinar series, your podcast, and similarly, in November we are hosting a sustainable development conference. So these are some of the forums that we can use to transfer some of the knowledge that some of us might have to the others. While taking this into account, just think that for a company or for a corporation, the attainment of ESG might be very important for them because of the investors and the customers.
Yep.
But what about country? When we talk about the countries, they are a bigger machinery. So this is something that we are also trying to do. We are working with the Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiatives at Pakistan, and we're trying to develop the risk framework metrics for them that can actually give them an idea that what we are going into. We do appreciate that with the global inflation, or we can call it a pseudo recession, pandemic, and of course the supply chain disruptions, there are a lot of demands that the government has to take into account without having a proper process. But how can we convert those projects that the government has to do into opportunities in terms of these sustainability parameters? This is something that we are currently working on, and again, because a lot of experts in the project management from Pakistan and from abroad will be listening, so we are all in for technical as well as any other kind of support that you can provide to us, because this is something that will not happen overnight. This is not a project that will have a certain end date, but it will be a continuous effort that we need to put in to ensure that the project management community plays its role in sustainable development for the future generations.
That's right. It's a journey. As you said, it's not a destination. It's one that everyone has to come together to create something that will definitely outlive us. That's what the actual goal is. And I want to jump into that. You spoke about a risk assessment. So it doesn't matter the project you're actually running at this particular time. Risk assessment is one that you as a PM, even if you're just an analyst or an executive, a form of risk assessment has to be done to understand what's the impact of your project. If something actually happens, how is it gonna, impact the bottom line or maybe even your go live date? But incorporating sustainability factors into that plays a very important role. So I want to be able to challenge even project leaders who are out there who understand that it doesn't matter what my project is, but have you identified, like, even physical hazards, environmental hazards that could actually come up? What are the likelihood of them coming? How do you assess the impact and the consequences of that? How do you prioritize the pieces that has got, economic, environmental, or social impacts as well on your projects and maybe even across the group? Because now it's a case that we all are responsible as leaders beyond even just our role as project managers, because the world we are creating is actually one not just for us, but one we want to prepare for future generations as well. And then we have a path to also capture lessons. I think that's another piece that we need to actually understand. I know it's a learning process, but how are you ensuring that your teams are gathering the lessons of what they've learned so far to incorporate that, so we don't actually we don't remake those mistakes over and over again? So I want us to dive into. I know we spoke a little bit about the risk. We spoke about the programs. Based on your experience and the research you've actually been doing, especially with Pakistan, what have you found to be the key challenges that that's actually being faced in the uptake of sustainability in project management?
So mainly, if we are talking about the public sector projects, I think the story is totally different. So we are still in an outward-based project success zone, which is very dangerous, and it actually halts all creativity in the project team. Instead, what we are trying to offer to the ministry is that they should be able to fix the outcomes and the benefit level success, and let the team decide how they can go towards that in an innovative fashion, instead of just focusing on spending that particular amount that is approved in the budget. We should be focusing on more strategic decision making in terms of what we actually want to achieve from these projects. So just to give you an example, Pakistan has a five form based evaluation which runs from PC1 to PC5. PC1 and 2 are the proposals. PC3 is a quarterly report that needs to be submitted for each project. PC4 is a report that you submit at the end of the project, and PC5 has to be submitted after 1 year of each project till the fifth year. And basically the PC5 is the most important aspect with regards to outcomes and benefit. But unfortunately, the PC5 is usually not taken seriously. So what we are trying to tell the public sector is that we need to fix the items of the PC5 first. That what are the outcomes that you need, that you wish to achieve in the 2 years after this project is rolled out. And irrespective of how you spend that money, or what interventions, what changes that you bring in the initial plan, you need to achieve this outcome. And once you achieve that outcome needs to translate into benefit. So this is the basic ideology that we are focusing on in terms of risk management, that the whole project life cycle needs to be focused in a way that it goes till the benefit level, instead of focusing on outputs. And because in the developing countries, why we are taking it from a policy angle, because the project management manual has not been updated for a very long time. So we are focusing on that we need to be adaptive here. We need to focus on innovation. We need to focus on people coming into projects that have their own ideas, instead of just doing what the client wants. And this is what I think is the basic problem, that irrespective of whether I knew that my client was wrong, I had to do it because it was part of the scope. And this is something that is changing uh, with the agility coming into the topic of sustainability coming into project management, and that strategic nature. So this is the basic conceptualization behind the whole concept, that we need to ensure that all stakeholders that are designing projects
Yeah,
or doing projects, managing projects, they need to understand what is the actual aim you want to achieve from this project, instead of just telling the project team that this is something that you need to achieve. Eventually that will never help you achieve the benefit.
that's right. I think it's just did we hear that? It's a perfect segue for project lifestyle. We've been talking about sustainability. And then you wonder, how can I leverage this across other aspects of life? Because sustainability is a piece that touches us at work and at home. We've been touching on the framework, what we call the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line is all about you adopting, not just thinking about the environmental piece, you think about the economic and social piece. How exactly is this affecting you, and how are you planning out your entire life? I want you to think about this very, very, quickly, and think, what are the social impacts of the decisions I'm actually making on a day-to-day basis? Are there things that I can actually change a little bit? Are there things that I can actually reflect on? Are there areas that I need to probably pivot and do things slightly differently? For the social dimension, I think a lot of engagement has to be done, especially around the people around us. On projects, we have our stakeholders. At home, we have our spouse, we've got families. How are the decisions we're actually making? How do they impact the people around us? What about social equity? Are we doing things to ensure that every group, even the ones who are actually disadvantaged, have an upper hand, who could actually get a piece of whatever pie is actually out there? What about community development? What about health and safety? What is that thinking about to say? When I think about sustainability, it's not just about me going to recycle things out there and say, yes, I'm saving the environment. But from a social dimension, how are you showing up as a leader, even at home, to ensure that we create equity, we create provision for everyone around us? Then what about the economic piece? How are you planning your entire life to ensure that you're not going to run into debt? Because for us to create something sustainable as well, you need to think about your children. What legacy are you leaving for them? How are you actually planning your finances? Are you one who's actually assessing your costs, your revenues? How are you thinking about all the income that you are earning to ensure that you actually don't even go into debt? Sustainability, again, as I say, it's just beyond just thinking about the planet is actually going to go away as people actually think. We are not going to do that. But think about the other components that come into play. What about long-term viability? Whatever you do, whatever decisions you actually make, are you thinking about the long-term impact? What does this decision mean for my family? What does this decision actually mean, even for my organization? I want you to bring and always think about the triple bottom line. that approach and bring that in even in your personal life and say, yes, I know that I'm actually going to ensure that I recycle, I do those basic things that you need to do as a human to save the environment, but also think about what about the social piece? How mindful about every single aspect that you have that connects into our overall well-being. I want to bring engineer back up as well. How can we think about sustainability as well, even in our personal life?
I think you've summed up it in a very good way that we all have families at home. We need to think about how our projects, like for example, if I'm setting up a foundry in the middle of the city, I should know that this is the air that my daughter and my son will also be breathing. And secondly, I think the way we treat people around us, the way we are we coexist, are we aware of the rights that we have and of the people that work with us in the team have, and how much we are trying to infringe them. And this is this is something that is a very important aspect. And of course, just like you mentioned, that the career planning should be done in a way that reduces the burden on the future generation instead of giving them more burden of debt or any negative aspect of economics.
A hundred
But I
percent.
think, yes, but
You're gonna get time to dive in. There's actually time for questions and answers. So I know I want you to just
for
get into
sure.
that. So there was a question that came in before that spoke about leveraging this in our personal life, and you're just trying to get into that a little bit around our finances. So can you dive into what tips do you actually leverage to create more sustainable life? It's really around your finances. So just get into it.
Um, I believe the most important aspect with regards to personal lives, how can they be more sustainable, is the governance. How we actually manage our homes, how inclusive are we in our approach, whether we take into consideration the views of all the people that are involved in the running of our households. And similarly, this can be taken into consideration with regards to organizations and countries as well. So the more inclusive you are, the more debate that you create, I think the more democratically governable that particular aspect becomes, and then you can initiate all the sustainability initiatives that you want. Just to briefly give away that the governance aspect is usually in terms of how good partnerships that we can develop. What about our vendors when we are trying to look into the possibility of let's say there were lockdowns in COVID. We were thinking about our employees, but whether we were thinking about our vendors or not. When there are economic issues, we try to compensate our employees, but whether we are compensating our vendors as well. So this holistic approach to governance, I think that is the basic thing that we need to work on. We need to focus on, and that will eventually not only make our lives sustainable, our corporations, our organizations sustainable, and then of course we can go to the countries and of course the global goals that we are talking about.
Fantastic. Another question. We have Kiza here. He said, what practices are you most proud of implementing at the Sustainable Development Policy Institute or sharing with your business PM community in Pakistan? So what are the most what practice are you most proud of that you can actually share with us as well that we can leverage and learn from?
Sustainable Development Policy Institute (SDPI) is a think tank. We deal with only the soft side of the projects. We're into research, advocacy, and capacity building, but we try to ensure inclusiveness. I think this is probably the biggest strength we have in terms of sustainability. In addition to the advocacy and the research that we do in order to make the government implement a lot of the sustainability initiatives. So we have a very clear clear policy that we are an equal opportunity employer. We totally deal with we have women, we have people with disabilities that are easily working here, and that is not an issue. And we also have a special provision for a lot of employees in terms of they can work from home if they are not comfortable coming in because of the soft nature of the projects that we deal with. Similarly, but again, these might not be equivalent to the activities which are typically done in the project management industry in Pakistan, because of the fact that the majority of the project management organizations are deal with infrastructure and construction. But I think the inclusiveness, especially in terms of the community development, this is something that we really need to focus on in Pakistan. For instance, the wind power plants are there in very near to Karachi in Sindh. So this is very important that we focus on community development, community engagement. Just to give you another example, I was recently working with the Gilgit-Baltistan government, which is a very remote area in Pakistan. So they had issues with managing their projects, especially the emergency projects, which come in due to floods and the landsliding issues that come in due to in the summer region. So this was exactly 1 year back. So there actually is no concept of community engagement. So I had a very good friend who told me that all these projects in Alaska, for instance, are managed by communities. So we have to empower the communities. We need to be very much focused on the empowerment of communities in terms of developing vendors out of them, as well as developing their own capacity to at least help themselves for the amount of time till the government is able to come to their support in times of these disasters. So we have, and this is something that I now regularly am saying at the government meetings as well, that we need to add something into our calendar, which is the annual floods. So Pakistan faced one of the worst floods last year, but this is something that we had a gap of. I think last flood was somewhere around 2014, but last year it was devastating and throughout Pakistan. So we need to prepare the communities for it. I think the government does not have the sufficient machinery to help the people at the right time. And So this is something that we can do. I think community engagement is something that we really need to focus on.
Definitely, I know it's a different ballgame when you think about the developed world and developing world as well. But when we think about sustainability, it's a piece that everyone has to be part of. We have to come together and coalesce to ensure that we are all working towards the same goal. Another question. We've got a question from this leader here. He says, how do you reconcile project inclusivity with consensus and still ensure objectives are met? How do you reconcile project inclusivity with consensus and still ensure objectives are met?
Yes, I believe that the main focus that we need to do, and this is the literature guiding us, is that once we focus on the value development, value creation, and the benefit level success, automatically the objectives become broad and there is room for debate and innovation. So there automatically becomes the debate of consensus and inclusivity becomes clearer. And I know that because we still have projects going on with an output focus, and I'm totally focusing on this question from an academic lens. So I think the realization of project management as a strategic tool will eventually create that gap, and these objectives of the project, the output level objectives, will eventually not be those iron objectives. They will be we will be able to innovate around them. We will be able to debate around them, and this is, I think, the future of project management.
I love that, and I want to add to that. When we think about inclusivity, the pieces on every project, we all need to ensure that everyone has a voice. Everyone can actually share their perspectives. Everyone needs to be able to, come into the space knowing that there's actually, to be any fear of anything negative actually happening. But overall, when we come in and share and bring our ideas to the table, we always need to ensure that we are focusing on the strategic objectives of the organization. For instance, we're talking about sustainability. When you bring feedback, we need to ensure that does this actual feedback, does that actually tie back to pushing the organization forward or the economy forward? And so when that's the lens we all look with, it's an easier way for us to kind of say that, yes, for instance, engineer, that's actually a great point, follow, that's a great point. But let's ensure that we stay on the ball to keep our focus right there. It doesn't matter if it's a mega project or a small project. We need to be inclusive. We need to bring diversity and ensure that it's actually consensus. But there may be times where we have to make decisions that may not be totally one that it's a consensus overall, because maybe it's off the chat and it doesn't tie back to the strategic goals and objective. So we need to be clear about what the objectives are. That has to be communicated, and the teams are aware that this is what the goal is and this is how and why we're working towards that actual path. And whatever contributions we make, that has to be the focus every single time. It's been a great show. I want to just say thank you so much to everyone who's actually joined. We've had Kizzer, we've had Alphas, we've got Grace, we've got Rama Varasha. I hope I got that right. We've got people from YouTube, we've got Alexander, we've got so many people, Mohammed Alpha, we had Keiko. I want to say thank you so much. We had Tabana. I want to say thank you so much for being here today. It's been a great show. But I want people to know, can you tell us about the projects you're actually working on and how people can actually connect with you, Engineer Ahad?
So basically, a lot of questions that were asked are basically the first component of our project, that we need to explore sustainability in project management in developing countries, especially. But we need to diagnose that what is causing the project still to be not prioritized according to the sustainable development goals. Although there is an international pressure, there is legislation, there are a lot of policies developed in this manner. Secondly, I think we need to raise awareness, and for that, we are raising funds for that conference panel that we discussed earlier, that I discussed earlier with Fola as well. That conference panel will be focusing again on this aspect, but from a more awareness raising lens, that we can bring in the international experts to Pakistan and how they can eventually give us a way forward on what to do next. The third stage is the development of the frameworks, just like I discussed, the risk management framework for the government of Pakistan. And similarly, these frameworks can be translated to other governments as well if we have interest. And once we have development of these frameworks, the next step will be capacity building around these frameworks of the relevant people, that how we can develop capacity within these project management organizations that are here and that are working according to their current TORs. How can they shift their TORs to a more strategic level, to a more benefit focused level, and that can eventually give us the sustainable competitive advantage that we are focusing on in all of our projects.
That's awesome. And if people want to connect with you, they can actually get you on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook, you're actually on Instagram as well. The key here is how can we create value? How can we ensure that we are building a world of the future that will not just be great for us today, but also for our future generations? I always say this. Jeff Bezos says he wants to put a ding in the universe, but I want leaders who are going to come together with me and become strata catalysts where we can put a positive dent in the universe. It's all about being strategic. It's all about being leaders. It's all about leveraging our project management skills. With everything, you've learned so much, but it becomes nothing if you don't actually take action. So I want to know in the comments, what's one key thing that you are going to be taking away to do differently? or maybe one thing that you've already done before and you feel that I could elevate that and actually make it even better. I want to see that in the comment. And above all, I want to see that transformation. Share this with your friend, share this with a colleague as well. And as you know, same time next week, we're going to be having a great leader who is going to be coming to talk about strategic focus as well to driving project management and project management offices. Once again, Engineer Hard, I want to say thank you. I know it's late in Pakistan. You've come all the way to share your space with us, and you will be coming to share a catalyst as well to help shape sustainability for us all over the world. I cannot wait to see you all next week. Thank you so, so much, and see you. Goodbye.